Welcome back to the Business Forum Show. Kevin Hunter with Adam Wallschlager here on the broadcast. And we have this lovely subject, Adam. I'm not sure if we're starting out being incompetent or if we'll achieve some level of competence by the time this is all done. But we're going to talk about the 4 steps of learning and help us out with this.
And we're learning ourselves on the fly. This is what we do when we sign up for personal development. That what we don't know and are incompetent of. So
there you go. So you know what I think about this first step in here: unconscious incompetence. We could probably spend the next couple hours of discussing what we see in the news today that's evidence of unconscious incompetence.
Yeah.
Could we?
This isn't a political talk show, right?
Yes, yes. We can see a lot of that. So talk about these steps, and then describe this curve that takes us from the top back to the bottom, and we start all over again on something new.
Sure. A place that I want to start that just popped in my mind is, you hear that statistic of most people after they leave their highest level of education, so whether it's high school or college, they typically don't read another book the rest of their life, right? They read because they had to in college, but then we go about our lives and we're constantly learning, but we're essentially don't know what we don't know. We're blissfully ignorant. And I know for me, once I kind of made the conscious choice to work on personal development, you go up these steps. And you start off with basically saying, I don't even know what I don't know. And you think the more you learn, the smarter you'll get. But I think people that are truly on that path, they realize there's unlimited amount of things to learn. And they become aware of all the things they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the second step is we're consciously incompetent. We become aware, the scales come off our eyes to all the topics and knowledge that is out there that we know we don't know, right? So if you pick an area, and obviously we're talking about business, and at Action Coach, we have those kind of 6 main pillars. And you think about a business owner that starts with us, they might be quite competent of the actual service that they provide, whether they're a roofer or an accountant, they're very competent of these things. But when they come into a coaching relationship, they find out really quickly that they don't know anything about finances, right? They don't know how to market. They don't know how to sell. And right away, they start off like, I didn't even know that I needed to know this, right? So they move up to that second step. And, as we start working with them, they become consciously competent. That means it takes them actual thought, right? They actually have to think about it, right? It'd be when you're learning to drive a car, for example, you know how to do it, but you have to think, okay, I'm turning right here. I need to push the brake, things like that. So it's very much going through the practice reps. And eventually you get to the point where all of us have plenty of examples that we're literally driving on autopilot. We're not thinking about the gas or the turning, right? We somehow pick our head up and think, I've been driving for 15 minutes and I don't remember anything. Or I'm at work when I was supposed to be at home, just because we're so unconscious to that skill, right? And the next one, as we were talking about before we started, it can be from now a training position. You're training someone else how to drive. You forget. You're conscious now that you don't even know what this person knows or doesn't know, right? So you have to figure that out while you're training them. But the example we talked about is, you know how to drive a car. Well, you go over to Europe and realize the driving is all different there, and you become aware very quickly that you have no clue what the rules are and how it's going to work. So you basically start this learning process all over again.
And for what people should understand, because we all will have places where we're either consciously competent or unconsciously competent. We have those lanes, but even within that area of expertise where we're just unconsciously competent, we can do whatever it is just on autopilot. All you have to do is change that lane a little bit, and all of a sudden we become back into the starting point where we're unconscious incompetent. Can move back there very quickly.
And I think just like all of these tools, right? This is a tool. This is a model. We've talked about the DISC personality, things like that. The tool is useless unless you're applying it to a situation that makes the tool valuable. So for me, I think about this when I'm coaching or training someone that is further down the steps than I am, and helping them through the emotions and things like that are going to take place when they're there. So for instance, if you shoot a ball right-handed and you're an excellent three-point shooter, but now part of your job is to start shooting three-point shots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the big theme in pro basketball now is these centers who basically have been standing in the lane, blocking shots and dunking. Now the whole game has changed and everyone's being asked to shoot three-pointers, right? That's not in their skill set. So to just expect them to go do it and have no emotion around it is it's not a likely outcome. They're going to be very frustrated. They're going to be, they're so type A winning successful, but now they're going to go back to this feeling of incompetence, and it's going to be very difficult. So as you work with them, manage them, coach them, train them, you have to be aware of that and communicate correctly, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. There's some people who can acquire a lot more of these unconscious competencies and in multiple different areas, but don't we a little bit as human beings have to choose where our competence are going to be? Because if we're going to try to be the jack of all trades of all things, and you probably see this a lot from a coaching standpoint where you're dealing with a single operator of a business who's attempting to become this competent person who wears 7 or 8 different hats and maybe never realizing just how bad they are at some of those hats they're putting on their head. That we have to accept as individuals, that we have a lane and we might as well be good at what we do and have other
Sure.
great people around us make up those incompetencies that we have.
That's a great point. So as you started talking about that, the thing that pops in my head right away is that 7 laws of highly effective people, starting with the end in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a combination of knowing where you're headed and what you want either your life to look like, your business, your career to look like, and then start moving in that direction, and knowing yourself, right? So how do you learn? What works best for you? For me personally, I didn't know that this was a thing for me, but I love finding something I don't know about and really become obsessive about it and learn as much as I can in a short amount of time until I get to the point of not necessarily mastery, but I know it well enough to say, all right, I can either talk confidently about this, know all the main talking points, be able to have conversations with people that, for example, have spent their whole life in this, and then I like to move on, right? Mm-hmm. So I enjoy that. I mean, that's just kind of how I like to do life. And part of the reason I want to do that is A, that's just how I'm wired, but B, I love connecting with people. So it's really fun to be able to talk to different people all over, coming from different backgrounds about a topic that's interesting to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So if we're talking about business owners and we're learning, well, what do you need? Are you supposed to be a specialist in a certain area, or are you going to be a generalist and have your generals running their departments, and those are the ones that are specialized?
Well, so even sometimes when people are thinking about more complex tasks, it's harder for them to understand where their lane of competence might be and where these incompetencies might be. But let's just take something really simple like throwing a party. So you're going to throw a party for your friends. And the reason why this is front and center for me is we just had a big birthday party yesterday for my daughter, Jackie. And I was just...
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I was just compartmentalizing the tasks. And I came up with some outdoor games for the kids, which involved, the beanbag toss, and I got a bunch of squirt guns with buckets of water out there for them. And we had the trampoline set up in the backyard and a play structure for them to climb on. And I put up this 20 by 40 outdoor tent. And then I hooked up this pretty amazing sound system in there. That was my job.
Right.
Steph figured out, from the food to the balloons to the decorations to all of this stuff. And people that came there, they were just like, man, you guys really know how to throw out a party. This was amazing. And yet, if Steph's contribution hadn't been part of the party, it would have sucked. If
Yeah.
my part hadn't been part of the party, it would have just been food and not really a party. And so, but because each of us recognized what our lane of competency was relative to just doing a party, together those efforts made an exceptional party. And in business, I think what the business owner or that individual person a lot of times forgets is that they have their lane of competency too. And they're going to have these places where maybe they think we'll just throw on a party for the people at work or whatever the task is they're trying to do. And they wonder why the end outcome is so bad. And in part, it's because they didn't know what they didn't know. And they thought they knew and they really didn't.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is a smart business owner realizes that there's going to be a cap on their growth and potential if they feel like they need to control everything or be involved in everything because there's only one of them. So if you really want to win and grow your business, you have to rely on other people's both their skill set, their specialties, and just their piece of the puzzle. Because like you said, it's going to be incredibly inefficient if you do the whole thing, both in time and talent. You can't be exceptional at everything, which was your point we made at the beginning. I think the other important thing is our brains are wired in such a way that they actually want to be lazy, right? So we learn something, we memorize it, and it becomes automatic so we don't have to think about it, right? So our brains aren't really meant for thinking. It's meant to do as little thinking as possible. That's why cell phones are actually potentially a very dangerous thing because instead of actually thinking and having to hold knowledge, we know that all we have to do is go to Google to figure that out. So a story I read, this could be about business partners or could also be about marriage. They said one of the bad outcomes of getting divorced is your spouse has essentially become your external brain, right? They remember all the things that you're not remembering. So that's why there's this huge sense of loss is you are essentially sharing a life experience. And now that's severed and you have to learn all the things you didn't know.
Yeah, crazy. So the takeaway for business people out of these 4 steps of learning, what do you think they should be consciously aware of as to how their incompetencies and their competencies are affecting their business?
Sure. So, you know, when we have, I know we talked about this in the past, positional agreements, right? So a new employee starts, you outline what their role is, what they're responsible for, how they're going to be measured and that sort of thing. But there also needs to be both a starting assessment and then a where are we going assessment. So any employee that I hire on my team, I need to assess their skill set and I need to figure out what skills do they need to continue to add and develop to keep their growth going, right? We did a millennial workshop recently, and one of the big things is learning and growing their skills and wanting a mentor or a coach, right? So 75% of the workforce is going to be millennials in 2025, and it's that's something that they want. We need to be considering how are we going to keep growing them, right? It's not just they come in, punch the clock, and do their work. They want to develop both personally and professionally, right? So it's basically figuring out what the skills they will need and then a plan for how you're going to get them. Are you going to just dump everything all at once? Are you going to have an escalating, skills that are building on one another? Having a plan for people to move up this and then realizing every new skill they take on, they're going to be going through this cycle every single time.
Right.
Right. And what's interesting is at first it's painful, right? So when I take on something new and I work my way up, it gets better and better. It feels better and better until I'm an expert at it. But then if I want to go and learn a new skill, I'm going back to the bottom, which is really frustrating. And a lot of people get burnt out and then they say, all right, I've learned enough. I'm tired of going through this pain. So eventually your job as a leader is to get people to go through this enough time that it becomes a habit. Learning becomes a habit. And they understand, okay, yep, here we go again. I'm learning something new. I'm going to start off feeling like an idiot, but eventually I'll get there, right? So then you know the process is painful, but the reward and the result at the end is always good. So you make it a life habit.
I like that, making it a habit, because if you don't remove yourself too far from the process of learning, then it's not nearly as uncomfortable to start over again. And
Yep.
so many great
Well,
examples
think about
of
it.
that.
Like the comment I said about most people not reading a book after their last day of schooling. It is painful, and it's a lot easier to not walk down this path. It takes a lot of energy to learn something new. That's why most people don't ever do it. But it's such an easy way to separate yourself and differentiate yourself as an employee, for example, to become invaluable. Right? That book, Linchpin by Seth Godin. That's essentially what he's saying is, you have to make yourself invaluable to the company. And part of that is learning new skills and getting new experience.
Showing that extra incentive in just about anything will put you in a small minority of people.
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent stuff. Kevin Hunter with Adam Wallschlager here on the Business Forum Show, the 4 steps of learning. Be consciously aware of these and go and employ them in your business today. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Now you have to add.